Live. We are live for the second weekly In the Huddle podcast and welcoming in my quarterback, number 14, Steve Grogan. And we're so happy to have him on board. We had so much fun last week, Steve, with John Hanna that we're setting you up. We're setting the mark kind of high, is what I'm saying.
John's a hard guy to follow.
Well, not unless you're a running back. It makes it kind of easy on everybody.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So how are you? Well, let's do it this way. Where are you?
I moved back to Kansas City almost 2 years ago, and spending most of my time out here. Turned my sporting goods business, over to my oldest boy Tyler, who's been working with me for 15 years or more, and he's running the business, and I still have my hand in it a little bit. But it was time to get back closer to family. Mom and Dad are the late 80s, and I just felt like I needed to be around for them and some of the rest of the family. So that's where I am now.
Well, and you can go ahead and shamelessly plug the fact that it's Grogan Marciano in Mansfield, Massachusetts. If anyone's needs fulfillment of team sports and sporting equipment, that's where they can go to find it, right? How's that for a shameless plug?
Yeah, well, I was trying to take some of the people I know around here. I was trying to take credit for the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl last year, because I had come from New England after all those Super Bowl wins, and they hadn't come close in ages, and then they won. So I figured it must be me moving back here brought the good luck for them.
Right, like rubbing a rabbit foot, huh?
Exactly.
Oh, that's terrific. So are you staying active? You can't be just like retired and hanging out. You must be doing some stuff, huh?
I'm playing a lot of golf, 2 or 3 times a week, and that kind of keeps me moving a little bit. I've started reading a lot more. I hadn't read really just to sit and read in a long time. I've read some books that I've really enjoyed getting into, and we've got some dogs that I take care of and go for walks with. And, I'm keeping somewhat busy. I'm not as hectic as it used to be.
Well, that's good. That's good. You deserve not to be. You deserve not to be hectic. Oh, that's right. There we go. That's even better. Now we got it. Let's talk a little bit about the old days, and when we had John on last week, one of the big topics we had in that whole conversation was the fact that Baltimore had finally beaten our rushing record that we set in 1978, and I never thought that as long as that record had stood, I'd never thought anyone would get near as close to it as they did, but they sure did. They had a couple of good running backs, and they had a quarterback that could make it happen. And you were one of those kind of quarterbacks, and I'm not so sure it was because you wanted to take off and run, or we were just lousy pass protectors. So you pulled the ball down and got out of harm's way fast enough. But 76, you set quite a record that stood for a long, long time. That was the rushing TDs by a quarterback, and I think that was at like 13, wasn't it?
It was 12.
Okay.
I actually scored 13, but one was a fumble I picked up and ran in the end zone, so they didn't count that as a rushing touchdown.
Oh my!
Well, I had 12, and then Cam Newton came along and beat that by several, and now he's going to be the starter for the Patriots, which I find interesting.
Yeah, I would have lost that bet too.
They go from Brady, who couldn't run a 40 in 6 seconds, and now they got Cam Newton, who's still running, I'm sure, 4.6, 4.7 40. So it'll be interesting to see how they adjust their offense to his talents.
Well, I'll bet, in some sense, I'll bet Josh McDaniels got a big smile on his face. I mean, it just kind of opens up an entire playbook, game planning and all that kind of stuff.
So.
With the kind of stuff that he's got going. Steve, your thumb is right in front of your camera. If you could move that a little bit. There we go. People want to see your pretty face.
I'm trying to hide my face. It doesn't look too good anymore.
Well, that record stood for almost as long as the rushing record then of Cam Newton if Cam Newton broke it.
Yeah, that was 35 years before he broke it, and then the team rushing record came 2 years after my record was set. So this was a couple years. I think the rushing record might have gone 36 or 37 years for the team thing.
That was 40 years. Yeah, 78 to 41 years. 78 to it was broken in the 2019 season. So
yeah, I never thought anybody'd break that record. The way the game's changed, to throwing the ball all over the field, nobody runs it much anymore. I just figured that record's there forever. But they came along and broke it.
Yeah, I remember, and then talking about your record, I remember when you set that record, we were down in Tampa. I think it was the last game of the year, the last game of the season. Tampa was 0-13. Back then there was that was 16 games, wasn't it?
Maybe.
No, it wasn't. It was 14 games. It was 14 games because it was 76, and we were down there, and they were 0-13 and didn't look like they were going to beat us. In fact, we had 21, I think, to nothing at one point, and is when they called your number to get it in the end zone to set that record. And I remember Tampa. I forget who the defensive lineman was. He was they got him in the expansion draft from Denver, and I knew him out in Denver for some reason or another, but he went absolutely rip when we called that play, like we were trying to run up the score.
Yeah, I remember that. It was late in the game, and we called timeout. I looked over the sidelines, and the coaches were calling timeout. I walked over, and they said, "Go ahead and try to score to get the record," and we did. And Tampa was furious.
Oh, they were hot. They were hot. And then you remember who kicked the extra point was Steve Zabel. Steve Zabel, who was Chuck Fairbanks' favorite anyway. He played at Oklahoma. Under Chuck Fairbanks anyway. He put himself in, told John Smith to stand on the sidelines, and he went in and kicked the extra point. And unbeknownst to the coaching staff.
The real trivia question on that is, who was his holder? And it was Dick Kahn.
Oh, was it really?
Dick Kahn pulled Mike Patrick out, who was the holder for Smitty. But get out of here, I'm holding this for Zabe. I
guess they just figured, why not, right?
Why not?
Oh, that's funny stuff. Well, you mentioned it too, with all the, how unbelievable it was that Baltimore beat our record, and it was going to take a special kind of offense and special kind of players to make that happen. And Lamar Jackson rushed for 1,200, almost 1,400 yards. He was their leading rusher, so as quarterback. So it was going to take some sort of special offense to make all that happen. When you watch a game now and you see all the spreads and all the formations and all the things that these guys are doing, if we ever called trips or jets formation or anything like that, we were behind and we needed to score in a hurry. It's now so much part of the offenses today. What do you think when you watch a game and try to make hide and hair of it?
I know the fans like the ball in the air all the time, and that's probably a lot more exciting. But the way the game's evolved, they've taken the running game out, but they've replaced it with the short passes. They don't throw the ball down the field that much anymore. We ran on first and second down most of the time, maybe play action occasionally. And then if we had a long third down, we'd throw it. But if we didn't have a long third down, we probably ran it. The ball went down the field. Guys like Stanley Morgan, who averaged almost 20 yards a catch for a 15-year career, that was the way the game was played. You threw the ball when you needed to, not when you wanted to. And that's been a lot of the change that I see is well, my last year with the Patriots in '90, Jimmy Ray came in as our offensive coordinator and installed what was basically the San Francisco offense that they called it back then. And the first practice, he was drawing up pass plays, and I said, who do I read on this? He said, I don't care who you read. I said, well, you don't look at the safeties or the linebackers? Or he said, what I want you to do when you drop back is if you see somebody open, I don't care where he is on the field, throw it to him. That was the offense. You know, he said, if there's a guy 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage and he's open, throw it to him. If you see a guy downfield, throw it to him. I don't care. There's no reads. Just get the ball to somebody and let them make a play.
Oh, my goodness. The West Coast offense, huh?
I had my best percentage throwing. I didn't play too many games that year, but when I did, I just threw it to the open guy.
Not try to force fit something in there, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Not trying to pick up 18 yards on 3rd and 18. He said, throw it to the guy on the line of scrimmage and see if he can run it for 18. So that's what we did.
Pretty simple offense, all said.
Yeah.
So I remember the reads that you had to make downfield in certain situations, and trying to read coverage by the drops or the initial lineup, people like that. You know, you mentioned Stanley Morgan, and you know, everybody. I remember when Randy Moss was here, and you know, everyone said this. You know, he could stretch the field like nobody's business. They both played about the same amount of time in years in the league, Stanley and Randy Moss. And I think Stanley was in for 16, and Randy might have been in for 14 or 15. But Randy Moss stretching the field, his yards per catch is like just below 16, 15.5 or 15.6 or something like that.
Right.
Stanley Morgan in 16 years, 19.2 yards per catch. And it was because, like you said, if it's 1st and 2nd down, we're running for first downs. You know, and I don't know about the rest of the guys, but I'd rather run block than pass block, and it's evident by the pain you've suffered in your aging years that I wasn't that good a pass protector. But you know, it was so painful to pass protect it, unless we were gonna, you know, unless it was gonna go for 12 or 15 yards, I'd just as soon run it, you know, and. But anyway, it's a shame that Stanley hasn't gotten more recognition for that kind of deal. I don't know that there's any wide receiver that for that period of time had that kind of yards per catch average, and I just don't think that that's something that anyone would break.
I don't know why he hasn't been nominated for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It just boggles my mind, the kind of career he had with us.
Yeah.
Certainly deserves at least looking at it. So I feel bad for him.
Oh, I do too.
He one of these days.
We had an opportunity to have a bunch of guys together. You know, when Troy Brown beat his team reception record, he and Stanley met on the sideline when Troy was active, and I don't think that they got to spend a lot of time. But I had an opportunity. I had a bunch of guys together, and Troy Brown was part of a group that we had put together for that. Remember, we used to do those food shows at Gillette when people would come in, and we had a green room that we all hibernated in until it was time to get out on the floor. And I had Stanley Morgan up for that, and Troy Brown sat in that room. I forget who else was there, but well, you might have been too. But it was interesting when they finally had a chance to talk. Stanley was talking about, you know, he and Harold Jackson in 1979, the year after we set the rushing record, you had 2,000-yard receivers in both of those guys. And Stanley was telling that story to Troy Brown, and Troy said, how many catches did you have? And Stanley said, well, I think he said Harold Jackson beat me by like 3 catches. He had 48 and I had 45, and you could see the wheels start turning in Troy Brown's head, you know, about how many yards per catch that was. And that was over 23 yards a catch, you know.
Absolutely.
You know, and Troy, who caught a lot of passes from both Bledsoe and from Tom Brady, but those were this kind kind of passes that you were describing. You know, he got open, you hit him for 6 yards, and that was good enough.
Oh, sure.
So
these guys are getting 10, 12 catches a game, but they wind up with 60 yards. We did that with the rushing game.
Right.
Handing the ball to Sam Bam or Tony Collins or Craig James or somebody.
Yeah.
Get 6 yards going straight ahead.
Yeah. And you know, it was interesting when they let you, and I don't know that you did it through your whole career, but I know you did it for a period of time. You called your own game standing on the field. I mean, you got some direction from the sideline, but it was up to you to make those calls. How tough is that to put all that together, Steve?
You know, I look back on it and I kind of wondered how I did it, but it was just something that kind of came naturally to me. You know, the coaches would give me their play sheet during the week, and this is what we're thinking. And at the end of the week, I had a sheet that 1st and 10 runs, 1st and 10 passes, 2nd and short, 2nd and medium, 2nd and long, all of that. And I had a knack to be able to memorize the whole thing with the formations, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. It really challenged me as a football player to be able to do that, but it also, the advantage was, as you well know, you were smartest offensive lineman I ever played with, and Hannah was probably the best offensive lineman. I don't know, I hope he doesn't see this. I wouldn't call him the smartest, but he knew what we could get yards with. And I could walk in the huddle, and if I didn't want to throw it on 3rd and 4, I wanted to run it, I'd look at you guys and say, what can we get 4 yards with it? And you guys would tell me what you could do with it. And I'd call that play, and we had success with it. It was something that coach couldn't do until you got to the sidelines.
Right.
And by then it was usually too late. So I could look at Stanley Morgan and say, you know, can you beat this corner on a in route yet? He'd say, no, keep it outside. Pretty soon he'd come back in the huddle, he'd go, the in route's there whenever you want it. You know, you had to know who to trust. Irving Fryer would come in the huddle. I'm open.
He was never covered.
Didn't matter what it was. He was open.
Yeah.
You know, I could get that feedback immediately that the coach couldn't get.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, when you stepped in the huddle and said of us at 3rd and 4, we need 4 yards. What do you got? And we'd tell you, when you broke the huddle and went to the line of scrimmage, you told the guy that you were going to get him 4 yards. That was a whole different mindset than hearing a play come in from the sidelines and wondering if those guys were watching the same game you were playing in, because you know you know what I'm saying. It was just you put yourself on the line with that, and it was a whole different deal. And you're right. You know, Stanley. It was funny that he would say, not yet, not yet. And I'm looking around and like, what's he going to do to set this whole thing up? And when he said yes, it was go. You know, it was fun to watch that stuff.
So it was fun doing that way. You know, throwing the ball, it helped me because I knew why I was calling the play. I knew who I was thinking about throwing it to. When it came in from the sidelines, we might have worked all week on maybe looking for Harold Jackson on this play, but the coaches had seen something that they're wanting me to throw it someplace else, but I couldn't get that from them when the play was just run in or signaled from the sideline.
Right.
But when I called the pass play, I knew why I was calling it and not just taking orders from the coaches.
Right. And the challenge in that too is how you're setting up the offense. You know, one play would, you know, help another play. You know, like we might be running, you know, our ride 34 or something like that, and then all of a sudden you're calling ride 134, and now it's play action because you've got your linebackers sucked in and making it happen. So, you know, and so the running play may only gain 2 or 3 yards, but you hit, you know, somebody, you know, a tight end running down the seam in the middle of all that whole thing, and it just set up one thing after another.
Well, I'll tell you a quick story. when we were playing in Baltimore, well, I'm sorry, playing the Colts in Indianapolis, it's probably 86 or 87. I was calling the plays from the sideline, and we had a scripted play calls for the goal line area. So this is what the coaches want to run first, this is what they want to run second, and this is what they want to run third. So the first one was a trap play to Mosey, and he got stuffed at the line of scrimmage. They had run a double stunt inside and just packed everything.
Yeah, I didn't like traps on the goal line. Everybody's on.
Well, I got this all of a sudden in my mind. I had a flashback to Jim Ringo, who was our offensive line coach when you first came in the league, I think.
Yeah.
Did you play for Jim?
I did. I was my third year when he came in. Yep.
So he told me one time when we were sitting around the locker room, he said, if you're ever in the end zone down there, run the same play over and over because they'll change the defense and you'll catch them eventually. That popped in my head. So I called the same play to Mosey. And it was supposed to be a toss outside. And Rod Humanek was our offensive line coach who put all that on paper. And he walked up to me, he goes, you got the toss, right? I said, no, I called the trap. Oh, what are you doing? We got to put the... And about that time, the ball was snapped, and they ran a double-out stunt, and Mosey walked in the end zone. I turned around and looked at Rod, and I said, sorry. So, just that's kind of the way my mind works sometimes.
Oh, that's funny.
In my head, we should try this, we should go with that, but
that's funny.
Certainly was fun.
Yeah, no, that's no question. I didn't realize you were that smart, Grogs. I'd have listened more in that huddle. No, it was.
Well, I knew you were smart when you first came in and told me you the next goal line play was a pass to you. 333 to me. You caught it.
That was. I don't know. A lot of the watchers understood that, as a center. Well, before I got to play center, they tried to make me a tight end and wing back in goal line and short yardage situations. And we were playing Joe Willie and the Jets in '76, my rookie season. And I got the call. In fact, I got to bring it into the huddle. I from the sidelines, I brought the play into the huddle and said to Grogs, it's quick. The play was quick 222 to me, or Teddy was Teddy, right?
Teddy, yeah.
Tight end to lay in. And I came in and said, quick 222 to me. And I'll never forget, McKay looked up, because everybody knew now, it's going to me. McKay looked up and he said, if you drop this, Rook, you're walking home. So I did it.
Added pressure, right?
Game was still in the lurch. We ended up winning that game pretty big. I think Joe Namath threw like 6 interceptions in that game.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But anyway, we ended up winning that game. That was my last hurrah at anything famous, but it was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. Well, I don't know if we got any. I'd like to invite our watchers that if you only get one shot at doing this, you got Steve Grogan. If you had any questions of him, we'd sure like to entertain that now. Let me see if we got anything from our entry. We've got. Let me see here.
So I looked last night. There was a comment. You were advertising this on Facebook.
Yeah.
There were 2 comments on there, and the second one said, 2 has-beens with no rings. Who wants to listen to them?
I went on and deleted that. You know who? We have one of our teammates, Guy Morris, is watching today. So we'll do a big shout out to Guy Morris. He's down in Kentucky. What was your off-season workout regimen? Is the question we've got here.
My off-season workout regimen was to drive my kids to nursery school, drop them off over by the stadium at nursery school, go to the stadium and lift and run and work out, and then go back and pick the kids up on the way home.
Somewhere in there was
I did the afternoons or whatever my wife told me to do.
some of that in there was probably Foxborough Country Club and a couple of swings with a golf club too.
I did that a couple times. I remember that it was the year after we'd been to the Super Bowl, and so that would have been late February. There was nobody else around except for Steve Nelson and myself. We're in the weight room one day, and I looked at him and I said, "Nelly, what are we doing here?" He said, "Well, the thing is, when you get to be our age, you know everything you need to do, but you can't do it anymore. So you got to be in the weight room and get to the point where you can maintain a little bit. But the young guys, of course, are taking off until, I'm sorry, my dogs."
That's all right.
But it was funny. It was Nelly and me, and the two old guys that were in the weight room getting ready for the next season a lot earlier than the young guys.
Yeah, you couldn't afford to get out of shape, so you had to kind of maintain all the way through it.
Absolutely.
Another question is which player from your old days would you like most to see inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame?
In the Patriot Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Or the Pro Football Hall?
No, Patriots Hall of Fame. Boy, there's some good ones too.
There's some good ones long in there.
You mentioned Mosey. He'd be one.
Yeah, he'd be one. Fred Marion, maybe. Took a long time to get Leon Gray in. I kept trying to get people to put him on the ballot, and when he finally did, he got in at the old timer thing.
Right.
He definitely just be in there.
Right.
There's Russ Francis. I'm not sure Russ was around long enough to be considered. I don't know how they manage that now, but Russ had a really nice career before he left us to go to San Francisco.
Yep.
Tim Fox was around for a long time. There's quite a few guys that probably deserve to be in there, but the way they've got it set up now, where the old timers are only every 5 years, it's going to be hard to get many more guys like that in, because they've got all these younger guys that won 3 Super Bowls, and they'll all be getting in as old timers now.
Right. Well, that's true. They do a pretty good job with how they set it up, and I don't know if our watchers know this, but Steve's on the committee that nominates. Isn't that true, Steve?
I was on it until I moved back here.
Oh, that's right.
I haven't been asked anything since.
Well, we'll do one more question, and then we'll let you go. It looks like you're being paged there. Which defensive teams did you most dislike to play against? What were your least favorite defenses?
Well, the Pittsburgh Steelers back in the late 70s were always tough.
I'll never forget you throwing the ball and hitting Dwight White in the back of the helmet after he spit on you down there in '76.
Yeah, well, I was a little temper back then.
Oh,
I still do.
He had it coming.
Yeah.
Those are great defenses.
They were great defense. Dallas had a great defense. So fortunately, we didn't play them all that often. I think in our division, Buffalo always gave me a hard time.
Yeah.
The Jets had some good defenses, but their offenses couldn't keep up with their defense.
Right.
I was giving a talk a few years ago back there in the Boston area, and I said something about it. The first game I ever played in the league was in New York in '75. I came off the bench. We were getting beat badly. So, I was playing against Joe Namath, and I couldn't believe that I was on the same field with Joe Namath. this guy in the front row said something about the Jets, and I looked at him and I said, "Are you a Jets fan?" "Yeah, I'm a big Jets fan." I said, "You know what? So am I. I had my best games against them." And I did. I did. I had some games against them that were just incredible.
Oh, yeah. I remember a couple of them. Some very lopsided games, too. You remember we played them in Foxborough one year. We ended up beating them like 53-6 or something. And all we did was come to the line of scrimmage and do check with me. We had something on them that if they got into a certain set, a preset on defense, and all it was, we were running in between the tackles. I mean, it was. I think Tony Collins rushed for like a gazillion yards that day, but it was check with me at the line of scrimmage, and we were running the ball.
There are just some games where the game plan is perfect, and then there's other games where you think you got a good game plan and nothing works.
Right.
You know, and that was one of those games where everything worked. Probably the next week with whoever we played, game plan probably didn't work.
Well, I can tell you this, that same year we beat them so badly like that, when we went to New York, they beat us. So who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Who knows? You're right.
Well, we should talk more often. I should call you more often and just stay in touch. It used to be that I'd see you at different things, but now that you're out in Kansas City and probably full of barbecue and craft beer at this point, that I should make it a point to stay in touch with you.
My plans are to start getting back there several times a year just to check on the business and everything else, but with the virus deal going on, I haven't gotten back out there, but hopefully by next summer I can get back out, see everybody, play a little golf with some of my friends, and find out whether I'm still in business or not, whether Tyler's doing a good enough job that we still are making a little bit of money.
Yeah, I think he'll do just fine. He was trained by the best. Anyway.
You call me anytime, because I always said I should write a book about our time there, but I don't remember a lot of things. You remember everything.
Well,
so you're the one that should be writing the book with all the funny stories, the things that went on. There's enough of them to write a big book about.
No question. Some would call it a novel, though, but it wouldn't be a book of facts. They'd say there's no way you guys did all that stuff. But
no, they wouldn't believe it, but it all happened.
Right. Well, anyway,
we had fun.
We sure did have fun. You know, and the nice thing about it is the era that we played in, there was no free agency, and the only time you ever left a team is if they traded you, rarely, or if they cut you. And, you know, to have played my entire 12 years with you and Nellie and John, Hannah, and you know, it was just, we raised our families together, and it just was a special time. So, anyway.
It really was.
Yeah.
Well, call me anytime.
I sure will. Our best to Robbie, and stay safe and healthy, and
thank you.
We'll touch base soon. Steve Grogan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You bet.
Yep.